What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of SCUM. I am your host, your bastard of ceremonies, Reckless Rexx Ruger. That, if you couldn't tell by those enormous gangly chompers, is the Freddie Mercury puppet. This is where the cool kids come to chop it up with your boy Rexx Ruger, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. I'm going to give myself a quick look to enjoy the view before my guest gets in here, and then I'm going to give you guys a little tip on how you can get your own rock star coiffed like Roth. Booyah! Get it, use it, love it. You can't look this good. Rule that out. Get that right out of your head. But you can step your game up levels. And as we know and talked about on here, life's about levels. Like Freddie Mercury back there. You know, his looks can only get to such a level. I mean, you know, the glaring problem is the two front teeth. The last thing he wants for Christmas is his two front teeth. It is actually December 7th, so we're getting close. It's winter here in upstate New York. You're looking at, as I said, Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. The hard science will soon prove it. But we've all known. If you've been tapped in, and you should be, you know you're looking at the son of glam, the front man for the band, the peanut butter to your jam. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Wop, bop, loo, bop, wop, bam, bam, shazam, hot damn. Whew. Man, feeling good. And as I just confirmed, looking good, which is obviously much more important. Luckily, I don't have that problem. Rockstar genes on my side. That's a good thing. Another great episode of SCUM. I can't wait to chop it up with this dude. Finally going to get him in here any minute. And of course, you know I won't edit shit. So you're going to see me talking to my guest. You don't like it? Take your little cursor and scroll ahead. Nothing gets edited here. We talked about it in recent episodes. I'm recording for posterity's sake. And as you guys know, I'm all about posterity. And wetting my whistle because the edibles, while not physically smoking weed, you do still get, for people that might not be familiar with edibles, sometimes you do get certain symptoms that you would normally get from smoking too. You do, oddly enough, still get cotton mouth and the munchies. But this episode certainly brought to you by, and my guest is having a little bit of a problem here, so and I'm talking to my guest, so if you don't like it, and there he is. So we're going to get down to it. That worked, folks. There's no crying in podcasting. This we all know. It's worth the wait, Larry. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I always tell people, man, there's no crying in podcasting. And I don't mean to say that, man, and steal it from the Tom Hanks, there's no crying in baseball. But
Right.
what the fuck, man? You're at the, you know, you're at the mercy of technology.
Yes.
Now, just now I sent it to your phone and it didn't work. But oddly enough, when I sent it to you on Facebook Messenger, it did.
Yeah. It started working. Like the link didn't work at first, and then it popped
Strange.
up. And, yeah.
Strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a pleasure to meet you and have you on here, though, man.
Yeah. Great to meet you too. This is this is cool. I've been watching a lot of episodes, and there's been some really, really cool guests, and yeah.
Thanks. And let me also say, man, that you know, she's part of your lineage and part of your family. But you know, if you can pass it on to her, I love Patty's book, and I'm a big one. For a couple of years ago, I had a couple spontaneous detached retinas in my eyes, so I had to have surgery, and then subsequently have the cataracts taken off, and now I can see great. But reading is a little tough, man. So I've really gotten to appreciate audiobooks, and I love that she narrates her own, which is makes it extra special.
Yeah. I like when the authors do that. Yeah, it's very cool.
You got to tell your own story, man. Oh, no one can tell your story like another entertaining one. I shout it out on here all the time. Mark Lanigan's audiobook too.
Oh yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Mark's is amazing. It's like just so heavy, and yeah. And he was the coolest dude. He was like such a,
Did you get a chance to meet him?
Yeah. We were buddies. Yeah. Yeah,
I like hearing that. I like hearing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that dude. I really love that dude, man. It's a shame because I heard him say once in an interview, man, that unfortunately there weren't a lot of opportunities to see him here in the States. He was a little more economically viable over in Europe. People were more enthused to see him over there, which sucks for us US fans.
Yeah. Yeah. He was such a talent. And I mean, I saw way back, like Screaming Trees back in, when they were first getting going back in like 80, 86, around that time. And they were, from the get-go, they were amazing. And he was like just an amazing frontman and singer.
Yeah. A criminally underrated. Out of all those grunge bands that got huge, man, it almost seems like Screaming Trees were there first, but yet still there was nothing left for them after the scraps were all taken, man. Like they just didn't elevate to be as big as the other ones did.
Yeah, yeah. And it's wild because they were kind of like, before everything blew up, they were really, in the thick. They were one of the early bands of that scene to kind of get, signed to a label and do all the stuff, get signed to SST. And, they didn't quite have the moment of like Nirvana or Soundgarden, but but the music they left behind is still, it's like so great, so amazing.
Funnily enough, they ended up on the single soundtrack.
yeah.
Which Mark talks about in that book. But like Mark and I've been fortunate. They were great songwriters too. I've had Gary Lee Conner on a couple times, and like he could write great hooks and great songs. But Mark in the audiobook, I brought this up with Gary too. He doesn't really seem that proud of the past work that the Trees did, though, dude. And it's fucking killer stuff, man. I don't know why. It almost looks like, it seems like before that Nearly Lost You album, everything before that, he kind of pans a little bit, like he's not proud of it.
Yeah. I'm not sure what. Maybe that's just like an artist thing where they, like you always like you think you can do. Always top your the last material you did as you go over the years, and maybe he just looks at that old Trees material as like that he was still learning his craft. And but even back to the very first Trees release, Clairvoyance, they were incredible. Like Gary Lee's writing was amazing. Like they were just already a fully formed
It's a shame. It's a shame now because a lot of that stuff becomes popular again, man. But they don't even have the opportunity, man. I mean, unfortunately, Mark and Van are both gone, man. So I mean, it kind of sucks a little bit, but
it really does. Yeah, it's a bummer.
Well, I imagine you being from that Seattle area. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. I mean, I have stuff that I've kind of fleshed out about you, man. But you're from Seattle, right?
Yeah. Born and bred and up there. Yeah.
And so was there always great music there, or did the world just not become aware of it until the 90s?
It was, I mean, there was like growing up in the 70s, I mean, the one band that we all like kind of was our band was Heart, because that was the only like big band that was from our area that were like, oh, we have Heart. And
oh, believe me, I've got a granddaughter, man. I listen to plenty of Heart.
Yeah.
I got a granddaughter who loves them, man, but I encourage it, man. Like, they're good, powerful women in rock and roll, good role models, great songwriters. The best. Yeah,
great stuff. And as the 80s came along, it was a place where there was no record labels or any music industry there, no one looking to Seattle to sign bands or anything. So there was like locally there was a few metal bands that were like a band called Rail, who were actually the first local band that I saw. And you'll like this because this was my second concert, and it was 1980, and it was Van Halen on the Limited Children first tour.
Yeah.
And
well, there's nothing after the Roth years. Let's just face it.
Yeah, exactly.
I refuse to believe it. No disrespect to Sammy. I love Sammy, as an entertainer or whatever, man. Just don't really love him in Van Halen. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, those Roth years were just like, everything they did was amazing. When I first heard them, it just blew my mind. I mean, I was a big Kiss.
That's one of your first concerts, 1980. How old are you?
Well,
at that time?
my first concert was Kiss in '79, and I was 11.
Yeah, I hear that story a lot, man. Kiss is a lot of people's gateway drug.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, it was a huge, me and Patty were huge Kiss fans in the '70s. And finally, like, our parents were like, they kind of relented and said, all right, we'll take you to see Kiss.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the last of the original Kiss era. It was, Dynasty. So, yeah, it was when a lot of us, younger kids were, going into Kiss. And
so you got to see Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley's still with him at that point? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 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 I even remember his solo, his guitar solo. He had his Les Paul that lit up.
Yeah.
And he played the Close Encounters theme on it. And he let the guitar go and it flew up into over the crowd.
Yeah, that's cool.
He took his other guitar and he shot his guitar out of it, just blew up and disintegrated.
What's cooler than that when you're that age? What's cooler than that when I'm thinking that's cool in my 50s.
Yeah. I'm still like, God, that was so cool. That was such a great experience. And then it was about 6 months later for my I was still 11 and I was about to turn 12, and my oldest sister was like, I'm gonna bring you to see Van Halen, because then they were my favorite band at the time. So going to see Van Halen was just another level of just like it was again, for a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, it was pretty mind-blowing. And the opening band was a band called Rail, who were like a local band in Seattle, who were in the area, like, known. And
but you guys also get to boast Jimi Hendrix too. You get to take credit for him.
Yeah. We got Hendrix. Yeah. And then in the early 80s, as far as any bands that were kind of did anything like Queensryche were, the big metal band. And
Queensryche is the first band I ever saw take a stage. I was 14. It was Queensryche on the Injustice for All tour, opening for Metallica.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I have a kinship with Queensryche too. They were on that Operation Mindcrime tour, which was a great album. Yeah. Great concept album, man. And they had a cool thing going. And technically they opened for Metallica. So they're the first band that I actually saw on a stage.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. They were great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Everything that comes out of Seattle seems to be fucking awesome, man. It fascinates me because it seems to be loaded at one time. I don't know if you could speak to what it's like now or whatever, but it just seemed to be like teeming with so much fucking talent in one city, man. I mean, I think of the people, man. I mean, just the ones that I admire the most. I love Lane Staley and I love Mark Lanigan. They're like two of my favorite vocalists. I can listen to their voices all day long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Lane was another guy who I knew, who was he was the sweetest dude, like the coolest dude, and such a talent. And I think at the time of us in that scene in the 80s, it was I don't think we we were, I don't think it really registered that, like, because every local band that was happening around that time, around the mid 80s, when when the kind of the grunge bands were starting, that were kind of like
91.
And even back into the 80s, where it was kind of like the hardcore punk scene, like most everyone was coming out of that and forming the more rock and roll kind of bands. So we had Green River and Malfunction and
I love Andy. Andy. I love that dude, man. I really, I've been guilty of saying this on podcasts before, and maybe fans might take umbrage with it, man. But as much as I love what Pearl Jam does, I would have rather had Mother Love Bone around. I just like the songs more, and that's no disrespect again to Eddie Vedder or any kind of slight of the legacy Pearl Jam has, man. But it's a shame that we had to lose one to gain the other.
Right. Yeah. It was really heavy. Like when Andy died, it was a huge blow to the scene and the city, and it was just like because it was the first like death in the local scene that everyone was kind of like like affected by it. And so it was pretty heavy, and it was kind of like and he was like I used to go see Malfunction all the time, and they were amazing and super fun band to see live. And you know, and there, I guess, yeah, it's crazy to think back, because I would just go, you know, I saw the Melvins so many times, and Nirvana and Soundgarden and Green River, and it was just like every week there was stuff going on in these little clubs, and you'd go see these bands, and you know, and they were usually opening for, you know, the touring bands who would come through town.
Right.
And I think it's almost like we got spoiled by it, because like, oh, this is our little scene, and we just see these bands all the time.
And then it's crazy. Then suddenly there's a huge microscope on it. Just come 1990, 91, suddenly everybody's wearing flannel, and it's like it's the hugest craze in the world. Suddenly just everyone's focused on Seattle.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really weird, because I remember like kind of that moment of like seeing at the newsstand, seeing like Nirvana on the cover of Rolling Stone.
We're the scene. We're the scene now.
And it was like, what's going on? This is insane. And like everything was just like all eyes on Seattle. And it was like wild. That little scene just kind of like, it wasn't ours anyway. It was like everybody was, you know, wanted to be a part of it.
Well, and those bands really had the goods too. Like if you remember, man, they all did MTV Unplugged. They were all the most legendary, best MTV Unplugged. Like these were really talented bands. That guys that really had chops.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Pearl Jam does an Unplugged, flawless. Nirvana's Unplugged, legendary. Alice in Chains Unplugged. Everybody that came on there and did an Unplugged that was from that era, man, was just you could see the amazing musicianship. These are guys that really honed their craft in that city.
Yeah, because it was like a lot of these guys, you know, were, you know, kids in the 80s who were coming up playing in punk and metal bands. And, you know, I would see like Mike McCready, I saw his first band, they're called Shadow, who were like a metal band of teenagers. So everyone was just like playing all the time and swapping members, and, you know, very like it was the community, you know, kind of vibe of that city.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a lot of time for bands to kind of develop their you know, their songs and everything. And so by the time 91 hit, all these bands had like this hit, you know, really great foundation of you know, of just talent and songs and records that they'd already put out. So once everyone, you know, the world kind of caught up and you know, discovered all these bands, then they had, you know, like everyone was buying Nevermind, and then they're like, oh, what's this Screaming Trees or Green River or Mother Love Bone? And then they discovered all this other stuff. So it was really cool for everyone in that.
And now for people that might not know, you know, for people that do know, they obviously know that Patty during that time, great success too, man. On the cover of Rolling Stone, Hole was huge during that time too. But you guys made music together though, or ever tried to do a band together?
Oh yeah. Like in the 80s, we would like she was in bands, like, you know, going back to like 84, she was in punk bands, and we would kind of jam around, and you know, and we didn't really have a real band till 1990. We formed a band with a few other friends called SCUM, and we're just, you know, like a few other friends.
Is that where somebody sued you for the name and you had to change it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Because we had put out, you know, we're just this little, you know, indie band in Seattle, and it was like right before everything exploded. And
you had to change it to Kill. You had to change it to Kill Sybil.
Yeah.
Someone actually made you do that? That's crazy, man. Somebody actually came after you guys and said you can't use Sybil.
Yeah. And it was just because like we had this first single called Sybil, pressed like 1,000 of them, and the girl at the label we worked at, she sent it out to whatever magazines to get it reviewed, and it got a review in Alternative Press magazine. And we were like, oh my God, that's like a big deal. And and they liked it. And but out of that, this manager for this other artist called Sybil like sent the label a cease and desist and said, you can't use that name. And then we were like, oh damn. So it's kind of a joke. It was like, oh, it's, you know, we could use it. It was like Kill Sybil was a sort of a tossed off goofy joke, but we just kind of used it. And then we had a single and a full-length album under that name. And
what do those guys think they are? How do they know they're the better Sybil, man? They should give up their name, or do it the old-fashioned way, flip a coin, or have people, or maybe poll whose current song is better.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and it's crazy because there was other bands, like, I mean, back then without the internet and everything, you didn't really know, because there was a Screaming Trees in the UK. There was an old band from the UK called Nirvana. There was all these other, you just didn't know back then without that, all we had was magazines and, so.
But no matter who else calls themselves Nirvana, we always know who the real Nirvana is in our mind. Yeah. I don't care. I don't care right now if there's some Nirvana playing metal music over in Egypt right now. I'm never going to think of them as the Nirvana,
Yeah, totally.
Kurt Cobain's version of Nirvana is always going to be the Nirvana you're going to think of, man. Is he the most, he's an intriguing figure, because obviously we lost him, very early into his life and in his career, man. But Mark Lanegan, a lot of his audiobook, again, to get back to it, was a lot of escapades and times with Lane and with Kurt Cobain. And for a guy as talented as Mark Lanegan to put Kurt up in such glowing terms in that book, man, how much did you know of Kurt or know Kurt, man? And was he really one of the most prolifically talented guys out of that area?
Yeah, I knew Kurt a little. Like, I wasn't close with him, but he was, like, I'd met him going to shows, and then later when Patty joined Hole, then I, got to hang out with him and stuff, and he was super cool and just very mellow and, just a really sweet dude. And I think he, I think as far as like, because when I think about like his kind of genius and his songwriting, it was very unique as far as what was, especially with the other guys in the scene. Like Lanegan had his own thing, like this, like, heavy kind of dark, like he was
Kurtz came off the most punk, I think, man. Kurtz came off the most punk rock.
Yeah, it was the most, like, scrappy and kind of unhinged and wild. And but of course there was, like, Mudhoney who were definitely always stuck to their kind of punk roots. And but when you think about like Lane and Mark and Kurt and Chris Cornell and Mark Arm, and like everyone had a very unique kind of style to their songwriting and singing, and they all had really cool qualities that that it's almost like they kind of complemented each other, as far as like if you're getting into the Seattle scene and like they were, even though that like that whole grunge thing kind of gets lumped into this, like, it's one sound, but it's really not when you listen to Nirvana versus Screaming Trees, or it's like kind of coming from, they definitely have their own unique,
and thank God for it, because it would be a little derivative. It would suck if they were all coming from the same direction. You're right about that, man. Soundgarden always came off a little bit like metal, and then Alice had their own kind of doom sound. You know what I mean? Like the Trees had everybody did have their own thing. That's true. Now what was the creative process like when you and Patty were in a band together, man? Like how did you guys get along? Because obviously, you see siblings in other bands sometimes, it can be disastrous, like the Gallagher brothers or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny because we just went to see a movie documentary about the band Red Cross the other night, and it's the McDonald brothers, and they're amazing and super cool people, and it was cool to see how they grew up and made music together. And with me and Patty, it was very, it was like there was almost like a psychic thing. Where
who else was playing with you guys in Sybil? Who was doing the singing? It was just you and Patty, or you guys had a whole fleshed out band?
Yeah, we had a band. We had, like, Patty was drums, I was guitar. Our friend Tammy Watson was the singer. This girl Dale was the guitar player. Our friend Robin, he played bass. So we had a full, and it was just we were just buddies who hung out and seen and went to shows. And then we thought, well, we should do a band too. And that was, we would just, we'd practice it in this old, like, punk rock house in the basement. And we would just, like, start playing and jamming, and you know, and it was very easy and fun, and occasionally I would like come up with riffs or whatever, and you know, use my tape recorder and go, oh, I got a riff, and
tape recorder, people. There's a pop culture reference.
Yeah.
Right now, people are going to Google what a tape recorder is.
Yeah, tape recorder. So we would just have cassettes full of riffs and ideas, but a lot of it was just jamming. You know, a lot of it was just, and because it was fun, and then if anything came about, it's like, oh, that idea is cool, and it was very easy and very like, you know, a lot of it we didn't have to, wasn't too much of a struggle, because I think there was just a connection between me and Patty and our, you know, like the music we liked and what we wanted to do. So it was a pretty easy, you know, like as far as the songwriting and stuff would just kind of happen.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure, man, that obviously, you know, we don't have Patty on here, man, but I'm sure people would be curious, man. Like, I mean, since her days in Hole, does she still do music on any level?
Oh yeah. She's played in a few other bands, and she does like she gives drum lessons to you know, mostly like younger kids who, you know, like want to take drum lessons. And she just kind of like takes on stuff and does tours occasionally. And yeah, she's not in like a steady band right now, but she's always like doing projects. And she just did wrote music for a movie soundtrack. And,
oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So just, it's constant. Like music is still a constant.
Whatever happened with Hole, though? I mean, did Hole just stop? Did they officially break up? Did they just go on hiatus? I don't even remember, man. Like, I remember them having some kick-ass albums, and then I know I've seen Courtney Love in some movies, man. Is that what derailed it? I
think it was just a lot of things. I think they just kind of, you know, got burned out, and Courtney was doing a lot of movies, and when it ended, I don't think there was like a definitive, like, that's the end. I think they just kind of stopped, and I don't know if it was supposed to be a hiatus or not, but
I guess when you stop and don't start again, it's a hiatus.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that ended, and then I do remember, like, back in like 2004, Courtney did do a solo record, and she asked Patty to be a part of the band in the solo thing, and that also brought up another opportunity for me and Patty to play together again, because we co-wrote some songs for that album.
Oh, that's cool. For Courtney Love's album?
Yeah. So that was a cool experience to be like, oh, these, you know, it's like major label kind of deal, which I'm used to indie labels and stuff, and to have
always looks good on a resume.
Yeah. So it was cool. It was a cool experience just to be a part of that and have some songs come out on, you know, on a major release like that was cool. But Hole hasn't really, I don't know if they will ever do a reunion thing or not.
Well, they have Kristen, who's also deceased, rest in peace, right? They did lose another member of their band as well. So another casualty of that time period, unfortunately.
Yeah, another super talented, amazing person, and just such a killer bass player. And, she was really cool.
Yeah. And so me and you just jumped into this awesome conversation right from the beginning, but I don't want to gloss over currently like what you're doing. You know, I know you brought up Flesh Eaters, but you had said there's some other stuff that we would talk about on here. You know, I certainly don't want to not highlight what you're doing.
Oh yeah. I mean, the current project I'm doing is because when I first moved to LA back in the late 90s, I had joined a friend of mine was playing in the LA punk band, the Flesh Eaters. And he told me like, hey, we need another guitar player. And I ended up auditioning and joining that band, which was really cool because when I was a kid listening to punk records, like, I thought the Flesh Eaters were super cool. And they were on that soundtrack to Return of the Living Dead, which I thought was really cool.
Great band name. They got that covered.
Yeah. So, and they were one of the original LA punk bands in '77. So when I joined them, it was a really cool experience, and we made a record, and and then I went on to some other bands and did other stuff over the years. And then now fast forward, that was like late 90s. So now the singer Chris D, we're always in contact, and he said, "Oh, I want to do another record." So so I called up my friend Sharif, who is in a lot of amazing bands, plays with like Alice Bag and done stuff with Silver Apples, a bunch of amazing stuff. And then our old Flesh Eaters drummer Johnny Lee. So we've been just like Chris has all the songs, and we're just kind of like help flesh them out, and just put them together and write extra parts for them. So we're working on that, and we're going to record a record in about 2 weeks. And so that's like the main thing I'm working on. And then I'm always like kind of working on stuff on my own, just ideas, and then working on another project with my friend Dante, who was in a great band called Starlight Desperation. And
so you're keeping busy.
Yeah, there's just a lot of little things happening. So yeah, it's just like, I always want to keep busy doing stuff. Yeah. So
what's the creative process like? Like if you're going to write music, man, like I hear several of reoccurring stories on here. I hear a lot of people obviously say that they get sparks of creativity when they're driving. They might say something into their phone or jot something down, or while they're at their day job. Or you've got the creative types who can kind of go into a room and sequester themselves away and say, "I'm going to write music," or "I'm going to write some." Yeah. Well, what's it like for you?
It really is just like, because I'm not very disciplined with today I'm going to sit down. It's just like, I'll even after a day of work or whatever, I'll come in my room and see my guitar, and I'll just pick up my guitar and just start playing. And I'll have instead of a tape recorder, I'll have my phone.
Yeah.
and
it is 2024.
Yeah. So I still do have an old tape recorder, but and I'll just record ideas. And I just like have this whole, just feel my phone is filled with different ideas, and a lot of it is like, because I listen to music constantly, like throughout the day, and just always playing music on my phone, and I'm always like inspired.
What's your listening trend like? Do you listen to old favorites, or do you try to explore like new stuff, or is it hard to find new music that gets you excited on your?
I work at this record store called Amoeba Music in Hollywood, and so I'm and I kind of have to be kind of on like I kind of try to tap into the new new bands and stuff, and or I'll see new releases, and I still do the same thing that I did when I was a kid, where I'll see a record and the artwork will be like, "What's this? This looks really cool." Or there's a little or a little sticker on it, kind of like the first time I saw the first Iron Maiden record, and like, what is that? That looks cool.
Eye captivating. Yeah. Pulls you in.
So I'll look up bands on YouTube or Spotify, and just explore like if there's any new stuff. And I it's not a lot of new stuff I find that really grabs me, but occasionally there are bands that I'm like, "Oh, this is really cool," because I still go back and listen to like, say I'll put a playlist on Spotify or something, and it'll be like a psychedelic playlist or garage rock, and I'll hear a song and go like, "What is that?" Like old bands I've never heard before.
That's
cool. I'll go explore that and find bands I love that I never was familiar with years ago. So it's like a constant discovery of stuff just by
that's what's
listening.
Great about it. And as much as I like the old days and having a physical product, though, I mean, streaming is nice in the sense that you can really go on there and fucking find anything.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, because
it's right there at your fingertips. I mean, and you're just paying like a fee for your Apple Music or your Spotify or whatever. But I mean, Even before that, people were still going out there and finding like illegal things to download and stream them on. So it was always going to be out there,
Yeah.
At least it's you get some type of chance that maybe the artist can actually see some money from it,
For sure. Yeah, that's the thing is like it's these streaming services are pretty brutal when and I think there's certain ones that are certain things like Bandcamp are cool, or just buying stuff directly from the band.
Yeah.
And it's just a completely different time as far as like bands selling albums and it's just like, and there's still like, I kind of look at, the internet there's definitely a double-edged sword where there is some really cool, like on Instagram, where there's a lot of websites, things that I discover that are kind of like the old magazines and fanzines that there's not a lot of print anymore, but online, a lot of that stuff exists, and a lot of cool like podcasts like yours and different channels on YouTube that kind of serve that purpose of
they try to have interesting stuff on.
And it's a really cool thing to like just use the internet for. It's tough because if you're on YouTube and you kind of fall into rabbit holes where you're like,
all the time. But you know what? In a way, I'd rather be falling into those rabbit holes and watching stuff that I like than being subjected to ads and watching cable TV, though. I mean, it just makes more sense. Sure. I'd rather go on and watch like 10 documentaries about bands or some cool video on there rather than sit down and watch, have some sitcom on that every 5 minutes is going to a commercial break. I mean, you can filling your head with more stuff and taking advantage of that time.
It's really cool because like some of the interviews you've done, I've like kind of scrolled through, and like even though bands I've never heard of, or I'll click on it and just hear.
I get a lot of rock and metal bands. I get a lot of rock. I got a lot of rock and metal because they're always in promotional mode, and like they know that even if 50 people watch the episode, which is by no means a great number, but then in turn, if 25 of them go out and go to iTunes and buy your album, that's still more money than you're going to make. Like, I mean, if nobody comes and you don't get out there and let people know who you are at all on some level,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a tough spot because nowadays everybody with a laptop and a microphone is podcasting. I've actually got to go to the great lengths of having a Freddie Mercury puppet behind me and putting on a blonde wig and pretending to be David Lee Roth's son. So I'll go to great lengths, man, for my art.
Yeah.
Although I wish this was my real hair, though, man, because I think I would look damn good.
I think so. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could make a strong case for David Lee Roth's son.
I think so. I did the
math. I'm 51 and he is 69 or 70. So it's very feasible that Diamond Dave was getting busy at 18 and could have procreated.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I believe that. Yeah.
I mean, it's Diamond Dave, for God's sakes.
Yeah. You have the same.
Don't tell me that you ever met him. That'll blow my mind. You never met Diamond Dave, did you?
I never met Dave, never met Eddie, the Van Halen guys. That would have been really cool. But I
met Henry Rollins one night, man. Henry Rollins had a cool interaction with him. He does it on one of his spoken word concerts, man, where he got to meet him at the 01 Art Gallery. He was there with a friend, man, and they were putting some art on display there. And he ran into him, and he told a story that the Diamond Dave had a bodyguard with him and offered him a beer right there, man. At like 10 o'clock in the morning, offered him a beer. and he said he was just in full David Lee Roth, like to hear Rollins kind of mimic him, where he's just kind of like, what? You know what I mean? Just in character, like he's Diamond Dave at that moment,
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
I mean, it's cool when you meet people and they are, well, I guess unless they're assholes, man, but it's cool, like if they are who they are in an authentic way,
Totally. Yeah. Because it is kind of, it's a bit like meeting some of your heroes can be, because sometimes if it doesn't go well, or if they're not cool, it's like it really kind of is a bummer.
Well, I usually throw that question out as one of my subjective questions, man. So in your travels, playing music throughout your life or whatever, man, is there an encounter with somebody that sticks out in your mind? Like maybe somebody in music or somebody, in the world that you looked up to and were kind of blown away that you got a chance to meet?
God. Yeah, there's been a lot, actually.
Other than me?
Yeah, you're definitely number one. So let's get that straight. Yeah, there's been a lot, because it's just like this, journey of like being in bands and playing music and meeting a lot of people is really like, it's kind of like,
I mean, it's already blown my mind, because you've already said people like Kurt Cobain and Lane Staley and Mark Lanigan. So that's already fucking, I mean, I guess you answered it fucking 10 minutes ago when we were talking about just rubbing elbows with those guys. Those guys are all legends.
Yeah, that is kind of, it's cool to think back, because I mean, they were just in the scene and we were all at the same shows, and then, and it's, it's kind of a trip that it was such a, condensed, like everyone in that little scene are all like, and really cool people.
I mean, I think it's pretty amazing that Nirvana, man, only really was just a blip, like 91 to 94, and then it was all over, man. But they still put them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, man, 25 years after the start of their career. I mean, that says a lot about how impactful that they look at the material.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they really did have that kind of like, like the Sex Pistols or something, where it was a very short-lived and just like a explosion just went off, and then that was it. But it made such an impact. And it's like and there's compared to a lot of bands, there's not a lot of, like the Stones, or there's like an endless catalog to discover.
Longevity.
But with like Nirvana, there's just that little, but
like
it's
a thunderbolt.
Yeah.
Just fucking there and gone, man. So what will you do, man? So you mentioned about working on stuff on your own, man. Do you have intentions on putting out solo material of your own?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not really a singer, but I guess I as far as doing a project that I want, that I guess is more my own kind of ideas and stuff. I do want to start working on something, because I've done stuff like that before. It usually kind of morphs into more collaborative things, because I do like that. And I do, like, I play guitar and bass and a little keyboard, but I don't really, as far as if I have a drummer, singer, and all, like, I want everyone to kind of do their own thing, and kind of if they like what I'm doing, to kind of like add their own personality to it. Like me and my buddy Dante, who are working on something, it's definitely like our two kind of, the stuff we're into really complements each other, and we're really in the same sort of stuff, so it's a really easy kind of collaborative project. And
what is it in the vein of, like a singer-songwriter type vibe?
No, it's more like the Stooges, or
okay.
Just kind of garage rock, and just kind of Gun Club, and
I love that.
That's
love
that
hearing
kind
those
of
words.
vibe.
Yeah, I love hearing those words, man. I was just doing a dive on my platform the other day and going to Google and trying to see. I guess some of these searches I do are probably fucking stupid. Maybe they're a waste of time, man. But I was trying to put in current bands that sound like the Gun Club. But then the internet starts giving you. And again, shout out to Lanigan's book. I wasn't even hip to the Gun Club, man. He shouted out some great references within his book of some of his tastes, which really affected me musically too, because I went and explored some shit that I didn't know about.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because that's interesting, because it just kind of reminded me of like Mark was a big Flesh Eaters fan.
Yeah.
And Chris had a band after the Flesh Eaters called Divine Horsemen that Lanigan really loved. And back in the 90s, when I was playing in the Flesh Eaters, I took Chris D, the singer, to see Lanigan perform at the Roxy in LA. And I told Lanigan that, hey, Chris from the Flesh Eaters, Divine Horseman, is here. And he was like really excited.
Yeah.
And I got to introduce them. And Mark was just so, because Mark doesn't really get starstruck at all, but
right.
He was very, he was like, he kind of lit up, because he was really a big fan and liked his work. And there's a similarity there. They're very like dark noir kind of their writing and stuff. So that was a really cool special moment that I was like really I was like kind of thrilled that I kind of got to be part of that and see them meet.
I've been blown away. I've been blown away by Lanigan's book, man. I've studied that thing like it's the Bible or the Torah. I've read that thing so many times, man. It's funny because back in May I had a case of pneumonia. I was laid up for a while, and listening to, and again, shout out very much like your sister, Mark Lanigan narrates his own audio book. That is the gift that just keeps on giving, man. Rest in peace to the great Mark Lanigan, but his voice reading a book in that Tom Waits-esque voice of his is amazingly soothing. I would recommend it for people out there.
Yeah.
I can fall asleep to Lanigan reading me and telling me some of his life story. It's crazy, man. and I will shout out your sister Patty, because I've done it many times with her book as well. Unfortunately, it takes me forever to digest everything because I don't always set the timer on my audiobook thing, so it'll play all night, and I've got the person's voice kind of just under my pillow and muffled a little bit where I can hear the story. I've worked out a system. I've got it all down to an art, man, how I listen to them at night, man. But Patty's book has been quite impactful too. And of course, stories about you are in there.
Oh, yeah.
Makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And so at any point, like since Patty's years in Hole, have you guys done anything musically? Like, I know you mentioned like the Sybils thing early on or whatever, like after Patty had gotten really huge with Hole, did you guys like post Hole ever do any music stuff?
Yeah, we did. We had like just got together and over the years just like recorded ideas together, just like that kind of led to the when we played on the Courtney Love or had songs on the Courtney Love record. Those were like ideas that we just had ourselves that were just like we just wanted to play together and record stuff.
Yeah.
And some of those ideas kind of ended up on the Courtney record. And we did have some recordings that we didn't really do much with them, but every now and again we would get together and, like just recently we went to a practice space and just jammed for fun with another friend just to, just for fun, just to like
making music for joy.
Yeah. So we still talk about like, she's got a daughter now. So her time is, it's like to find the time to get together is a little tougher, but that's always a thing to find time just to jam and I got 3 grandkids and 6 grandkids, but me and my wife are so active in the grandkids' lives that out of the 6 of them, it always seems like there's some combination of some of them here. You know what I mean? So like we're almost like doing the parenting thing on some level over again, but as grandparents. You know what I mean? Like but we say all the time, my wife and I are both 51. But I remember being born and being little and my grandparents just already being really, really old. I don't remember having young grandparents that kept up with me. So I like being a grandparent at 51. Yeah, that's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Because
I guess it doesn't speak volumes about that. That obviously your kids are out having kids at a young age.
Yeah.
But hey, kids are going to go out and explore the world. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I was probably a father. I was a father at 21, probably younger than I probably was prepared to be.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, I have a 30-year-old son, but
Yeah. Wow, that's kind of cool. I mean, that's a trip.
All the grandkids, I don't have any older ones though, man. They're all like 10 years old and under, you know what I mean? All the way down to like 2, you know what I mean? So they're all small, but they're over here a lot, but they do bring like a life energy to the house though. I do notice the dawn after they leave, man. Yeah, it's nice after they've descended upon the house when they leave and it goes back to quiet.
Yeah.
Then you do kind of look around and you miss the vitality that they bring.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because I like my Patty's daughter, she's just turned 14, and it's kind of cool because it does make like the holidays and stuff, it kind of makes like if she wasn't around, I holidays for me is just like another day, but it kind of like brings us together to be like, let's do this, because when I was a kid I loved the holidays, they were fun, and so to like have someone we could like rally around to like for Christmas and Thanksgiving and make sure she's having a good time and not, I don't want to be cynical about that stuff because, it's just for the kids.
And are you and Patty in close proximity as far as like where you guys live?
Yeah.
That's
She's not.
that makes it easy.
Yeah.
None of my kids have decided to like leave New York State, which I wouldn't blame them, man, because right now it's freezing cold and we got about 7 inches of snow. So it's we're in fucking Suckville in upstate New York right now. Yeah,
really? Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, my parents are originally from Brooklyn, so I had like a little New York connection.
Yeah. See, the minute I tell people I'm from New York, they always want to know what borough because they automatically can't comprehend that there's any other parts of the state but New York City. But I assure you that there are. I'm more up near Syracuse, so I'm more upstate. But I'm 4 hours from all those great places in New York: Manhattan, Brooklyn. You know what I mean? The Bronx. I mean, I'm kind of smack dab right in the middle of central New York. You know what I mean? Right in the middle of the state. So 4 hours to Buffalo, 4 hours down to the city.
That's cool. Like I love upstate because it reminds me of the Northwest. It's very kind of like that,
Oh yeah. I could see you guys having weather like this. Well, you must have grown up with snow.
Oh yeah. That was great because when it snowed, it would be like you'd listen to the radio and it would be like these school districts are closed, and we have days that we wouldn't have to go to school because it snowed so much. That was really cool.
Were great.
Yeah.
And I don't remember this as a thing when I was a kid, but now at the end of the school year, the unused snow days, like in May or June, they let the kids start fucking taking them. I don't ever remember having that luxury. If we didn't use them, I don't remember them being gifted to us at the end of the year.
No.
It's no freebie days off. I don't remember that.
No, we never got that.
I didn't have it that good. Yeah, I specifically know that my grandkids in the last couple of years, come May or June, if they're unused snow days, they just started letting them have days off at the end of the year. Like, fuck it. Head here, take an extra day here, take an extra day there. I mean, it's at the end of the year, but.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. I mean, we could be teaching these kids up a little bit. That's a whole 8-hour day right there. I mean, we're not we're not exactly like unleashing great amounts of intelligence into the world. That's true. Take a look around. But so, so I got to get some of my obligatory subjective questions, that I try to thread into all the episodes. And I may have you on a technicality here because, and again, I'm sure people say this is pap or this is an older question, but I on my 6-pack of subjective questions have the desert island pick. And I do have what you said 3 years ago. So I will test you on it now because I also asked if I were to drop Larry onto a desert island, what would the desert island album be if you could only bring one with you?
Oh, wow.
And I saw you in an interview, and it's funny because I guess I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm sure people have used this desert island question before or worded it differently, but you were asked it 3 years ago. I found it on YouTube in an interview, and I've got your answer right here.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh, man. Okay. Yep. Well, it's always a bit difficult because there's a lot of really important records to me.
And I'm not going to chastise you if it's changed because, as you said, we are always discovering and changing our taste and drawing in new inspirations and kind of cutting loose and jettisoning some of the stuff that we're a little old on. So if the answer has changed, no worries, Larry.
All right. Well, okay. I'm gonna go. I know what I'm gonna say because this one was very like when I was a teenager and I was listening to punk and metal and anything extreme. And then I started to kind of open my horizons and heard about Iggy Pop and Bowie but the Velvet Underground and Nico, it's the first.
That's what you said
really?
In the interview 3 years ago.
Yes.
I got it written down right here. And I didn't write it down ahead of time. Yeah, I mean, for people that could read my shitty handwriting, Velvet Underground and Nico from 1967. Yep.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Well, at least hey, Larry, if nothing else, man, people cannot say that you are not consistent.
Yeah. Still, I'm holding my ground on that. And that one just
remain the same. Yeah.
That one's still gonna, probably be the answer.
And shout out to Lou Reed, man, a fucking legend, man, man, who actually wrote. And I'm curious about this audiobook because being 51 years old, I've had 2 back surgeries, so I need to really step it up here in the new year and get back into the fitness thing. And I've really been exploring Tai Chi quite a bit. And it turns out that Lou Reed was huge into it and actually wrote a book about it.
Oh yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I think I might have heard about that book, but I
I think
didn't
it's called
know.
I think it's called The Art of the Straight Line, I believe. And
Really?
it's really just his musings and his I think more a philosophical book on what Tai Chi has done for him,
Yeah.
changing the internal structure of yourself and breathing
Yeah.
and health benefits and stuff. I mean, it's not like a manual showing you Tai Chi, but I think it's more along the lines of kind of like memoir and
Yeah.
talking about it.
That's cool. He was such a multifaceted dude, and so like,
Yeah.
so he did so many things that were so like, I don't want to, not like antagonistic, like he did this on purpose, but he would just do stuff like, do a record with Metallica that was
Yeah.
like, some of his fans I'm sure weren't really familiar with Lou Reed, or he wrote songs with Kiss on the Elder record. There's just did all this crazy stuff that was kind of like, that's what he did. He would just do stuff that was,
I mean,
not
Metallica fans came unglued when he did that album, man.
Yeah.
Metallica fans didn't like it all that much either, man. But Metallica, though, man, has had like areas on their resume where hardcore fans like think they're hiccups. But I imagine as a musician, though, do you want to make the same album all the time? Though it's like, what do people want? They want Master of Puppets every single time. But then when you do that, though, you're almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because then if you are being consistent, then people say, oh, you never change, you never evolve. It's always the same fucking album,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if Metallica kept doing that, they would get the same criticism as they did when they started to change, and then when they cut their hair. And I always thought they kind of like, like, because you can't take like, especially those first few years of Metallica were just like groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Like, I saw them on the Ride the Lightning tour, and it was still to this day like one of the heaviest, like, in most intense concerts.
Great era to see him in. Yeah, that's a great era to see him in.
And I got up front and I shook Cliff Burton's hand, which was insane.
A legend.
And they just kind of like, it's like one of those things, like no matter what kind of side roads they went down or experiments they did, and kind of, you can't take away that, like, what they did and how.
Absolutely not. No.
Especially with Cliff Burton, it was just, just like incredible.
I don't think there's a metal band out there, man, that wouldn't say, man, that they wouldn't be like where they are because of Metallica. I mean, like they're like for that style of music, the amount of albums that they were able to sell is crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And those first 4 albums are like really flawless right up until, you can really even count the Black Album. It started to get a little bit more like ballads on there, but it still sold like crazy though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those first 5 albums were amazing.
They were so great. And they helped kind of like, a lot of metal kids were like, they turned a lot of, like with the Garage Days album, like turned on to a lot of kids onto punk and the Misfits and Killing Joke and all this stuff. And they just had they promoted other band, the t-shirts and they had that kind of community, because they were an indie band. They were from the underground, and they paid their dues.
Community. Yeah, I love that sense of community. The hardcore world has it too. I've had a lot of like punk hardcore bands on here. Oh yeah, and like they have that like lift up their own community and stuff, and like really rally around when someone is in their scene that that's maybe falling on some bad times or whatever. I mean, like they're really about big. Now another guy that gets like whose name gets lifted up a lot coincidentally, and who I hear is such a great guy. I don't know if you've had any interactions with him, but I think he's a Seattle guy. Is Duff McKagan.
Oh yeah, Duff. See, I've never met Duff, but I did see him when I was a kid. He was in this band. I mean, he was in a bunch of bands before Guns N' Roses up in Seattle. Yeah. And I did see him in a band called 10 Minute Warning. And he's just like, I'd like to get his book and haven't read it yet, but he's just the cool, I haven't met him, but just from all his interviews and stuff, he just seems like the coolest guy, and
absolutely
he's into the coolest music, and is he's been to hell and back with it, like
without a doubt. His books are incredible. His book, his second one is a little more of an in the self-help style. But the first one, It's So Easy, that one is like his memoir. That one's really, really good. It does come in audiobook. He unfortunately didn't narrate it, but it's still good and a good narrator. That matters for me. If I'm listening to an audiobook, man, the narrator can't be putting me to sleep, you know?
Yeah.
Got to be somebody with a little pep in their voice, man. But whoever does narrate that, though, it really does a good job.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I need to get that one.
He's got a great story, man. The two most interesting guys in Guns N' Roses to me are Duff, and I loved Izzy. I named one of my cats Izzy. I love that guy. I mean,
cool.
He's the unsung hero in Guns N' Roses in my mind.
He is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because those two guys like Duff and Izzy seemed so cool, and they were both from like the hardcore punk scene, you know, and they had that kind of, and I think that's what kind of their, you know, like they were doing it for the love. There was no, you know, like I didn't think they, like their initial reasons for playing music and stuff was just they loved it, and they wanted to, and they came out of that community. Again, they came out of like the Seattle punk scene and the LA punk scene, which was that community, which you know, is a very cool thing, especially when, you know, I remember being a teenager going to shows, and it really was like a secret club where you all knew each other, and you all like had each other's back, and you know, and you made flyers for each other's bands and played together, and it really was like there was no competition. Yeah. And it was all about just like, oh, when is your new band playing, or here's a tape of a demo or whatever. And it was all very much like everybody was supporting each other,
which is rare, which has got to be rare. Most people would probably want to be squashing competition.
Yeah, because nowadays it seems like there is more of a you know, there's a bit of a competitive, you know, especially with the social media, where it's like you want to get so many likes or want to get so many listens, and that makes which doesn't really mean anything, you know. It really doesn't. It's like, no, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I mean,
I because I do a podcast, I do keep tabs on my subscribers and my views, but obviously it fucking trickles in, man. I'm just trying to put together an assortment of amazing conversations, which they don't always have to be about music. We've talked about plenty of other shit other than music. I've had guests on here who are promoting albums, and we end up talking about men's mental health. You know, wherever the conversation goes, you know, I don't really care. I just hope maybe someday someone will look back at it and be like, oh shit, this is like a treasure trove of awesome fucking episodes here, you know? Totally. Yeah, because you really have you're really like your library of guests and stories are just so much cool stuff. And I'm trying to elevate it outside of just the rock and metal world by having like the Mark Cisneroses and the Joe Lallies and the you know, guys like you on and stuff. You know what I mean? Who might not be coming from the most obvious direction of just guys that come on here and just like thrash metal bands, or, you know, not to impugn those bands. I love those bands, you know, but yeah, and that's what, you know, that was kind of that punk and metal stuff was the thing that really ignited my, you know, back in the 80s. So that was, you know, I feel a kinship with that scene and those bands. And also just talking about random stuff where like the background you have, like, I could see Michael Myers, and that's a whole nother thing where I'm back there. He's back there. I got Dawn of the Dead back here because I'm a total horror movie nut. Like that's another. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I could do a whole nother episode on just horror stuff, you know, with you, and like there's so many threads of cool things, especially with some of the guys you've had on here who are definitely into, you know, some of the metal guys who a lot of them are really into horror, and that's like thing. I imagine that's probably like a resource that they tap a lot, like. You know, especially when you're writing in the vein of like intense, extreme, sometimes even gory, type material. You know what I mean? You know, you gotta tap into something, unless you're just permanently deranged in the fucking head and that stuff just rolls out of you, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe you might be wanting to seek some help if that stuff's just coming natural to you. You have to kind of because that, and also like that just brought up a memory of another amazing band that I grew up seeing and back in the day was The Accused in Seattle. They're legends. They were just like one of the first crossover bands, and that was another thing that drew me to them, is that they were totally into horror, you know, the splatter rock thing. And that was like they were
you know, like they were the most extreme, like, you know, most intense thrash bands at that
Yeah.
moment when they were coming out. And the fact that they were, you know, yeah, horror fans. And in the town I was born in, they had a house called the Splatter Pad where we would go to parties there, and it was just all like punk, you know, flyers and horror posters
Yeah.
everywhere. And that was like such a cool thing to, like, you know, hang out with these.
Who
like,
owned it?
I think they just rent, you know, back then in the 80s, it's like rented it for like whatever it was, $500 a month or whatever, dirt cheap, you know, back then. And they all just lived there and you know, practiced. But yeah, it was just another thing of like, there's all these connections of, you know, being into film, horror films and punk and metal and music and garage rock. And, you know, it's all like, it's just all like really cool universe, you know.
Are you able to find any new horror out there, man, that really tickles your fancy, man? Or do you tend to lean back on I like Michael Myers, but what I really like about especially those first two original ones, like that's obviously Dick Warlock walking through the hospital with his awesome fucking straight fucking creepy gait that he had. But you know, I like, and especially in the original 1978 one, is that there is a lack of blood and gore. You don't even really see anything. It's all just built up with that score and just knowing that Michael's in the shadows, getting closer and closer and closer. You know,
that's exactly.
That's why it's a 4-star on cable. That's why it's a 4-star horror movie, because of, you know, that's real suspense.
Totally, yeah, because that is like it's a total classic. It's one of my favorite all-time horror movies, and my top favorite horror movie, which also is not as gory as people think it is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh yeah, not that gory.
It's just intense. It's
creepy.
Just like anxiety. And just, but as far as gore, there's very little. It's all like kind of implied, you know, and it's very terrifying. Like and and that but I do tend to kind of go kind of like the music thing, where I tend to, now that there's like the internet and there's so much stuff being uncovered, like I tend to like, you know, the older horror movies that I grew up with, and I'm also discover old horror movies that I hadn't seen from the 70s or 80s that I'll rediscover. And as far as new horror, I sometimes get a little cynical about it, because I'm always like, like it's all been done, or it's always the same,
or it's very blood soaked now. You know, what I mean, like totally, like what's the one now that's making a lot of waves is those Terrifier movies with Art the Clown.
The Terrifier.
But it's just a lot of, you know, but I perused it a little bit, and it's just a lot of, I mean, it's just a lot of gore for the sake of gore.
Yeah, which is kind of like, it's been done, and it's been like, you know, a lot of these films are just, they just use the same formula and the same kind of like thing, where it's the same jump scares and the same, like, you know, weird stuff that is just like, it gets really tired. And occasionally I'll see a new horror film that that I'm okay, that's really cool, or that's an original idea, or at least an old idea that's, you know, kind of
run a cooler way.
Kind of in a fresh way. But I do love going back to, you know, watching some of the old horror movies I grew up with. It's like comfort food or something, you know. It's just like
familiar. Yeah. And so I would be remiss if I didn't ask. And of course, you know, you feel free to elaborate, you know, at your own discretion, man. But obviously, people who are going to tune in this episode who do know what you want to do, who do know, are familiar with what you've done. No longer playing with Death Valley Girls.
Yeah, not playing with Death Valley Girls anymore.
Okay.
They're still going. I think they're working on new material and stuff. And so I left the end of last year to work on other projects. And so basically that got the Flesh Eaters record, which might not be called, I think Chris might be putting it under a different name, Poison Fang Society. I think he wanted to call it to kind of differentiate it from Flesh Eaters.
Okay.
And then the couple other, you know, other stuff I'm working on that that'll eventually you know, like flesh out into real bands, I guess, because they're still kind of, you know, working on stuff. And yeah, so that's basically the main stuff musically that's going on.
And so let me ask, you know, from a fan standpoint, you know, to taking yourself out of the equation as a musician, shows that you've attended, and you may have answered this, but I don't know if you clearly defined the best show. Is there a show or somebody you've gone to see live where the experience has just always stuck with you? Just like one or two shows that really just blew you away and were impactful?
Oh man. Yeah, that's another one that's very hard because it's so like, there's been so many shows, you know.
Well, I don't have a previous answer for that one, man. You already passed Flying Colors with the Velvet Underground one. I'm impressed, man. I mean, we actually kind of turned that one into a one-question quiz, but you passed. Yeah.
That was good. I passed the test. I mean, oh, there's been so many amazing shows. I think like the thing about the seeing bands and stuff is the ones that really stuck with me were when I was a kid and still kind of like discovering new bands, and they made such an impact. You know, because in the 80s it would be like just everything was happening so fast, and it would be like, you know, seeing these bands like Bad Brains and DOA and Black Flag and Slayer, Celtic Frost, Voivod, like just so much amazing stuff. And I think that like there was kind of like in the mid 80s, like going to see, I mean, that one show I did mention, the Metallica and Ride the Lightning was that was like 1985, and that one was just mind-blowing. And
that's seeing Metallica on a different level right there.
Yeah, and it was like that kind of era right around that point where I was seeing a lot of new bands. Like I also saw and this was like a few months later, I saw Sonic Youth, and that kind of blew my mind because I was into punk and metal and all that stuff, and then seeing a band like Sonic Youth that was kind of like doing a, you know, coming from this whole different no wave New York scene, that kind of like, then they became like, I just became obsessed with that world because that was another band that I was like just floored by. And then another band that was played a free show in Seattle on the waterfront was this German industrial band Einstürzen die Neubauten.
That sticks out too, huh? That sticks out too.
They were, that one was, and a lot of people in Seattle bring up the show, and even Chris Cornell in an interview brought it up as being like one of the greatest shows he ever saw, just because it was so, because we all, like everyone in Seattle who's into music went to the waterfront to see this band from Germany, and it was just like, just really intense, you know, noisy, industrial, with the sun was going down, and they had barrels with, you know, burning stuff.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It was like intense for like a, you know, and I was maybe like 18 at the time, and just being like, just that experience was, because the music was, it was more of like a performance art kind of, like just being overwhelmed with it. But it was almost like I could almost like take a thread from seeing Kiss when I was 11 to this show, because it was the same sort of thing. It was just sort of like a spectacle, and it was just like being pummeled by this sound and
wall of sound.
Yeah, and that one really just was like, you know, like was a really cool experience. And the first time I saw Nirvana, again, I was like floored. And this was like the very first show that they actually called themselves Nirvana. And this was 1988, and it was in this old rundown movie theater in Tacoma, Washington called Community World Theater. And me and my buddy Dave went, and Dave would go on to a band called Earth with Dylan Carlson, like the drone metal stuff.
Yeah.
And we went to see our friend Slim Moon, who ran this label called Kill Rock Stars. He had a band called Lush before the British Lush.
Yeah.
And he said, you guys got to stick around for Nirvana. And he described it as like more of a psychedelic Melvins, which were like, whoa, that sounds really trippy. Okay, we'll stay for Nirvana.
Yeah.
And I remember like coming out, and at the time they weren't like, Kurt was very like stoic, like they didn't move around, like Chris moved around. They had a drummer before, Chad Channing, this guy with the big double kick drum, drum set. And I remember the set, I remember the songs they played, all the, it's pretty much the stuff on Incesticide and some of the Bleach stuff that era.
You were watching greatness begin right there.
Yeah, it was another one where I was just like, I just sat there just listening, taking it all in. And when me and Dave left the show, we were just kind of both stunned, like, whoa, that band was from the get-go, it was like, they were awesome, and it was like so cool to experience that, because it was like seeing the whole, because then fast forward years, I'd seen them so many times, and the last time I saw them was like at the Seattle Center Coliseum, which is a huge arena that I used to go and I used to go to that arena to see Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and when I was a kid. So seeing Nirvana then and that venue, it kind of, and at that, it was such a quick, it was like whatever, 6-7 years later. So, or less than that actually. Yeah. But it was kind of a real, a bizarre kind of thing to see a band just sky, it wasn't like, because it wasn't like an overnight thing, because they did take a few years of doing tours in their van and stuff. Yeah. But in the scheme of things, it really was like they were shot out of a cannon once Nevermind came out. But I mean, I could keep going on about shows, but those are a few of the ones that.
Well, you've come from a great area, man. I mean, like with a lot of talent, man, and you've been, you're right there in the thick of a very interesting scene that I think was a snapshot in time. But I get the feeling that there's always been creative, artistic, amazing people in Seattle. It's just that time in pop culture, they decided during that 5-year window, 90 to 95, really put a microscope on it.
For sure, yeah.
But I mean, obviously these bands didn't just magically appear, man. They've obviously been honing their craft for a long time and working at it. It's just no accident that you're getting all this creativity in one area.
Yeah. It was just weird. It was just
crazy.
one of those things. Like there was, all the different kind of like New York in the 70s and London in the 70s or Liverpool in the like all these different points in time where the planets align and there's like a bunch of people who are being really creative and kind of inspiring each other. And that was happening in Seattle. And it was really like an organic kind of innocent thing where it wasn't like, no one was like, no one had any idea it was going to blow up like that. Everyone was just kind of doing their thing. And once the kind of, the media and the big labels kind of like discovered it, and then it blew up, which was, I mean, it's so cool that these bands got so many kids got to hear all those bands and get kind of turned on by, and Kurt's just like his taste and his politics and stuff were really a cool thing for
huge.
For kids to be inspired by, and kind of, I think that, it's like, it's very rare to have those kind of moments. So it's kind of, being part of it's cool, man. Listen, dude, I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this, man. This is the longest I've gone in a while, man, but it's been great talking to you. Hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes, man. It's gone by pretty quick, man. Yeah, but I enjoyed it, man, and I'm glad we're in touch now, dude. When you got something coming out or something's going on, jump back on here with me. For sure, that'd be great. Yeah, this is really a fun time. Yeah,
fun as hell. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. I've been looking forward to it, man. I mean, I listen to Patty's book and I feel like I know you on some level. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's
listening
cool.
to your music and stuff, and I'm like, he'd be an interesting guest, and you were.
Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah. It's been great to be on here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Stay in touch, man. And as soon as I put the link to the episode up, a couple days, I'll send it to you. I don't know, spread it around if you do the social media thing. If not, I don't know. People see it on the channel, I guess.
Right on, man. Yeah, we'll do. I'll post about it.
Yeah,
cool.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks so much, man. This was a lot of fun, man. Really.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was
right.
good talking to you, man. Stay in touch.
Yep. All right.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate you, man. There he goes, folks. Larry Schemel. If you want to check out his work, go check out Death Valley Girls. Past albums, do your homework. I'm not going to tell you which albums. That's up to you to fucking figure out, mainly because I don't have that written in front of me. But no longer doing that. Be looking for new stuff from Flesh Eaters and anything else Larry Schemel might put out, man. Super talented guy, man. And what an amazing conversation, man. That was a lot of fun, man. And I knew it was, or would be, I should say. We were scheduled to do it a couple days ago. Something came up in Larry's world. Never have any problem rescheduling, man. Was happy to do it, man, because I knew we'd have a great conversation, man. And an hour and 20 minutes later, here we are. Hour and 20 minutes later, still looking damn good. That's the verdict. And no, seriously, that was a lot of fun. Looking forward to that new Flesh Eaters stuff coming out, man. Stay tapped in with Larry, man. Go out there and find out what he's doing, man. Support your artists if you love your artists, man. Got to go out there. And also shout out Larry's sister, Patty Schemel. Amazing book. Hit so hard. Love the audiobook, man. Love hearing her story / their story. Just amazingly talented fucking folks, man. And I knew having a conversation with Larry was going to be a lot of fun, man. And it was. Hope you guys dug that episode. Whether you did or you didn't, I'm still going to do my obligatory promotional shit. Make sure to like and follow Pod Scum on Facebook, because if you're not playing ball with the social medias, nobody knows who the fuck you are, so you got to fucking do it. And I'm not on Instagram and TikTok and bullshit, this, that, and the other thing. Just the major ones, man. Like I say, I'm 51 years old. I can't be bothered with it, man. I don't even edit these episodes. So what makes you people think that I would be on all the socials? Facebook, you can stay tapped in. That's where you'll find out when new episodes are out and who subsequently is on those episodes other than me. Although I should be all that you do need for entertainment. But I realize that you tune in for my guest as well. So I acquiesce a little bit of, they're the ones you're coming to see, but at the end of the day, you're staying for the rock star. No, I don't want to sound too pompous. That's the Roth genes coming out of me right now, and I'm sounding pompous, and that's not sounding good. Folks, I'm gonna take an L right there and claim that was the edibles talking, or that the Freddie Mercury puppet was back there throwing his voice, and actually he said that. He actually did say something tonight. That was him talking through those huge fucking front teeth. But great conversation, man. And make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It's somewhere up there. If you're on the computer and you're watching this, chances are you can navigate a computer somewhat. You're not completely fucking stupid. So make sure to find your way up there to some bell-shaped fucking thing and hit it. And then you'll know when new Pod Scum is dropping. That being said, let me end this by, again, thanking Larry Schemel for coming on here tonight and reminding you guys to take it easy and keep it sleazy.